Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, the podcast where mothers share their powerful stories of healing and empowerment. I am your host, Amanda Quigg, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and advocate. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories of mothers who have overcome adversity, found their fierce feminine power, and embraced transformative parenting. Whether you're a mother driven to fight for your children or someone with a story burning inside you, this podcast is for you. Together, we'll explore themes of resilience, self-trust, and healing from our traumatic experiences, all spotlighting the profound journeys of awakened mothers. Join us for a space of naked authenticity, deep inspiration, and genuine connection. Embrace the divine feminine and discover your own warrior mama within. Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Awakened Motherhood. I'm your host, Amanda Quigg, and today I am very excited to introduce our guest, Sabrina Trobak. She is based in Fort St. John, BC, Canada, and is a registered clinical counselor and the author of Not Good Enough, Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety. She is also a clinical supervisor, public speaker, and holds a master's degree in counseling psychology. Before establishing her private practice, she dedicated over 20 years to education, serving as a teacher, vice principal, and school counselor across 3 school divisions. In her counseling agency, the focus is on a person's core belief: not good enough, not important, not valued. Sabrina has extensive training in addressing past traumas and its effects on the core belief in daily life, including anxiety, discontent, and anger. Her counseling agency, Trobek Holistic Counseling, aims to help individuals identify, challenge, and transform these core beliefs into good enough, important, and valued. Welcome so much. I am really excited to dig into this conversation.
Great. Thanks for having me, Amanda. I'm glad I'm here.
So, there was a lot just in reading that short excerpt of your background, but I really like when people come on to kind of start where it began. We know you were a teacher and some other things, but I would love for you to start, wherever your story here really begins, and share a little bit more about how we got here.
So always wanted to be a teacher since I was, even in school, I wanted to be a teacher. So that was just kind of the natural path I went into. Towards the end of my high school years, I realized I really liked working with kids that struggled. So I did my counseling in education, in minoring in special education. So I worked a lot as a learning assistant teacher, working with kids with learning disabilities, emotional support concerns, behavioral issues, those kind of things. Taught in the regular classroom as well, but kind of saw the whole gamut, and often saw kids who struggled from, the environment that they were trying to deal with at home, which then, kind of fell into the environment in school. So kids really struggling with anxiety, lack of confidence, not believing in themselves, and all those kind of things. And towards the end of my teaching career, I became a school counselor, and I went to a workshop on suicide that was presented from that perspective of that core belief, feeling not good enough. At the end of the 3-day workshop, I just knew that was what I needed to do. So I talked to the presenter. His name was Tony Martins. Him and I started working together, and he agreed to teach me his model of therapy. So I quit teaching and started my own private practice, looking at things from that perspective of that core belief, not good enough, which we're then really digging at a much deeper level. So rather than looking at anxiety, insecurities, alcoholism, all of those different kinds of things, we're looking more at why are they there in the first place. Yeah. In the school system, that's just not, there's no space for that. We're, in the school system, you're more just kind of putting out the fires. Whereas with this, I get to dig much deeper and really look at that core belief, help people become aware of that core belief, and then challenge and change it.
Yeah, no, and I'm sort of curious how that reflected back in your own early childhood development, and did you carry some of those core beliefs yourself? Did you see yourself in a lot of that?
Oh, for sure. I think most of us grow up, not good enough. I'm 57. I grew up in the generation where we didn't talk about emotions. We just locked everything down, put it down. we still do that the vast majority of time, but we are getting better at acknowledging emotions. Well, when you're not given that opportunity to really just sort through your emotions and figure out what's going on, often feel very powerless, very unheard, very invisible, which again reinforces and supports that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I think it's, kind of as what you were saying, all these things people come to therapists, counselors, et cetera, those are all symptoms. They're
Right.
symptoms, but they're not the root of the issue.
Right.
And so many of us know that. We know that even disease and illness is just a symptom of a deeper issue. There's so little out there around how do we actually get to said root issue and what do we do, because everything in our environment is validating that we're not good enough for XYZ, right? So
Right.
we've created our entire life with those beliefs.
Right. And I think a lot of our systems, like our medical system, our education system, they're kind of built on that foundation that we're just going to scratch the surface, right? So it is harder to dig deeper and really figure out what's going on for sure.
Yeah. So what does it look like? And do you still work with just children, or are you working with everybody now?
Good question. So as a teacher, I assumed when I started my own private practice, I would be working mostly with kids. But what I realized very quickly is it rolls downhill. So it's much better for parents to pass that information on to their kids, for the kids to try to push it back up to the parents. So now in my practice, I work fully with adults. I will work with children, but under the condition that I am also working with the adults as well.
Because the kid can't hold it themselves without
And honestly, it's not their responsibility to do it anyways, right? It's not the kid's responsibility to make the family healthier. That's the parent's responsibility. And often what we see is once people even start counseling and the child's in counseling for maybe 3-4 sessions, then the child doesn't really need counseling anymore because the parents are doing things differently. They're handling things differently. They're talking at a different level. So the work is really, really quite significantly focused on parents and on adults. I mean, ideally, if I can get a couple or individuals that don't even have children yet, that's the ideal situation.
Before we recreate the pattern.
Exactly. We don't have to backpedal. We just start right from the get-go for sure.
Yeah. Amazing. So are those 3 that you named in the bio, the not good enough, not important, not valued, are those the primary ones that you see?
Those are the main ones that we often see. Is the not good enough is a very, very significant one for sure. But then we also see that not valued or not important as well as significant ones for sure. Yes.
Yeah. And in my own life, I was always either too much, which is the flip, right, of the not enough, or I didn't matter. So it's a similar version.
Right. And that too much is often, so if I'm having to prove I am good enough, I don't really believe I'm good enough. Right. So that's where we often see that too much. It's still founded in that not good enough. I'm just trying to really compensate for that, trying to prove that I am good enough, prove to everyone else that I am good enough. Yeah.
Right. Because as a kid, I was too loud, too this, too that, everything else.
Yeah.
And so it was constantly tone it down. And at the same time, I wasn't living up to the expectations because I was too smart. So I should been XYZ, right? So it just circles around all of these things.
And that's what we often see in the school is you got to kind of fit in the pigeonhole. And if you don't fit in the hole, then you're too much, you're too loud, you're too smart, you're too all those kind of things, which again is, definitely beating at that not good enough, not good enough, not good enough for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely resonate. And unfortunately, it's really one of the biggest epidemics in so many ways. It has all of these really horrible symptoms out in the world. I'm somebody who personally believes that these traumas that create these core beliefs are ultimately the root of every single illness, disease, all of the division, all of the us versus them is constantly still that fight within ourselves. And it's so, so important for us to feel whole within ourselves in order to have that reflection on the outside.
For sure. I mean, it's connected to a lot of illnesses, a lot of injuries. Even if it's not the root cause, the chances that it impacts the healing of it is really, 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 really high for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you also wrote a book about all of this, right? So
Right. So what happened?
because you're only one person.
Right. So what happened was I started my own private practice in 2010, and within 6 months, I had a waiting list, and I've had a waiting list ever since. And I hate having to turn people away. So I thought, well, if I write a book, then I can at least provide a resource for people who can't access counseling because there's a waiting list, or some people aren't really ready yet for that leap of counseling, but they're wanting to learn a bit more and understand a little bit more. So the book is to provide some insight, looking at those kind of things in a hopefully a safe environment. So the book is a handbook. So you read a bit of information, and then you apply that information to your own personal experiences, gaining an understanding of your core belief, how your core belief developed over the years, how you reinforce and support that core belief with your behaviors and your choices and your perceptions and your relationships and all those kind of things. And really helps you kind of break that down. The more you understand, the more empowered you feel in doing something different.
Okay. So the first step is really that kind of awareness and more than like a deeper awareness, actually understanding how this has so much shaped your experience.
Right. A lot of my clients, when they come into me and we start talking, they say, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I felt. But I never realized that was a thing. I didn't know it was just kind of always this annoying kind of thing in the back there. Right. And so being able to understand it, know what it is you need to challenge, then you can do something about it. But we don't know. You just feel like you're kind of along for the ride and you're just holding on to survive. As long as you're just in survival mode, there's not going to be a lot of real, quality living going on with it for sure.
Well, and so many people have a version of the same thing. So you actually fit in a sense, with this belief, right? It's all reinforced by our environment because everybody doesn't think they're good enough.
Right. And there's comfort in numbers. And so we often are drawn to people who have a similar level core belief as we do. So there's some people whose core belief is pretty strong. They feel pretty much like they are good enough, important, and valued. But there's some times where maybe that's a little rocky. They're not hanging out with the people whose core beliefs are not good enough, not important, not valued really, really significantly, because it's not meeting either of their needs. So we end up kind of feeling like, oh, everybody's like this or nobody's like this. I'm all alone, when really neither of those are true. There's other people who are struggling in varying degrees, but there are definitely healthier people out there. You just have to work on yourself so you're drawn to different kinds of experiences.
Well, and I can completely relate, even in the ways that has evolved and changed over my life. Is when my life blew up and everything changed, I had this belief that I had no options. My needs didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was everybody else around me being okay. And so I was at the very bottom. It's just unfortunately very common for moms to put themselves at the bottom of the value ladder.
Right.
Because at least I held this belief that what made me okay was my kids being okay, that their needs came above mine. And honestly, this is even written in legal statutes, right? Our ability to put our children's needs before our own is literally a custody statute, which on one level, yes, we need to make sure our kids are provided for, but their needs are not actually more important. It just, they can't feed and clothe themselves. It's not the same thing.
Right.
And so when I had that value ladder, everybody else's needs matter. Everything in me just needed to be shut down. My entire identity and experience was shaped by everybody else whose needs mattered more. I didn't exist in a lot of ways.
Right.
And only as I started to allow myself to exist did it, first of all, bring a lot of conflict both around me because I shook things up. But then once I took the stand and said, no, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, very, very quickly, everything around me changed. And there was literally no contact with those people anymore because there was no ability anymore.
Right.
And it can be that dramatic, and it's not necessarily always that dramatic, but the people who come into my life, it's different now.
Yeah.
Or they don't stay very long. That's okay too.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. everybody's on their own journey, and,
Yeah.
it's really not about judgment or, you
Yeah.
need to be where I am. It's you are where you are, and that's great. We don't really fit, and that's okay too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious how your own life has changed because I'm sure you had to go through this process yourself to unravel your own core beliefs in the process, and even starting your own practice is facing some of this. Am I good enough to do this on my own? Right? Because you've had the system, and so I would love to hear how that's changed for you too.
It was a bit of a challenge stepping away from 10-year, consistent paycheck, job security, holidays, same holidays as my kids. It was a very sweet deal for sure. I worked hard. I was a hardworking teacher. I put in a lot of time and effort into my students and all those kind of things. But there was a lot of security in it. And to
Yeah.
leave and go on my own, it was a bit of a challenge, a bit of a risk for sure. I had met Tony. Took me about a year for me to really kind of leave and start my own private practice. And in that year, I did do a lot of work with Tony where I was really working on myself, finding my own value, my own worth. You know, Often we grow up, and again, I think this is true for everyone, but we definitely see it with women as well, where you've gotta be the pleaser, right? You're trying to make your
Yeah.
mom happy, to make your dad happy, trying to be the peacekeeper with siblings, make your teachers happy, coaches happy. You're always trying to make everybody else happy. What that means is you never really get an opportunity to figure out who you are, right? I often hear parents say when their kids are, 15, 16, 18, 20, now I gotta go find myself again. And I usually say, "Again? You never found yourself in the first you one
Right.
thing to the next, to the next, to the next." So you actually need to do that. You need to go back and stop and look at what are your passions? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the things that you enjoy? Who are you? Figure out your identity of who you are. That's when
Yeah.
you can build that confidence and that core belief shifts. I don't even know who I am. I'm just so busy taking care of anyone else. How can I feel good enough, important, and valued? How can I feel confident? How can I feel content in my choices and my decisions? I can't. I'm doing them for everyone else. I need
Right.
to take that time and really just slow down, stop, look at things and try to figure out where am I? What do I want to do from here? Where do I want to go from here? For sure.
Yeah, no, I deeply relate, and I feel like I've gone through versions of it, and it kind of there's these cycles
Yeah.
of periods as we go through, and it evolves, or we learn a new piece, and we have a new there's another thing that comes up, and it rewrites the whole thing again.
Exactly. There's cycles and they're there for a reason because every time you cycle through it again, you've now got a different level of understanding than you did the last
Mhm.
time you went through the cycle, which means now you can understand even more. My clients do that to me all the time. They say, "Oh, I know you've told me that many times." I'm like, "Yeah." And that's okay because now you're understanding it at a level that when I told you the last 2 or 3 times, you weren't able to comprehend it at that. That's okay. You weren't ready. You weren't at that place where you had that
Yeah,
awareness, but now you are. So we need to go back and reevaluate things and relook at things on a very regular basis for sure.
yeah. What are the like external shifts that you see in people as they go through this process?
A big, big piece is a shift from high anxiety to calm.
Mhm.
We look at anxiety as a reflection of your belief in yourself. A lot of people say, anxiety is about the triggers, right? I have anxiety of um, being left, or, being abandoned, or whatever it might be. It's not really about that. It's about my belief in my ability to handle it. If I believe I can
Mhm.
handle being left, I'm
Mhm.
not going to have anxiety being left. If I believe I can't handle being left, I'm going to have much more anxiety. So that again comes back to that core belief. The more I
Everything.
understand, the more I challenge myself, the more aware I am, the more I'm aware of what my anxiety looks like, the more I
Yeah.
can challenge it and do it differently. So we say the opposite of anxiety is confidence. The more confident
Mm.
am, the less anxious I am. For a lot of people, they have anxiety. They know what their anxiety looks like when it's really, really, really high, but they don't necessarily know what it looks like at a 3 out of 10, a 4 out of 10, a 6 out of 10. So the problem with that is I'm not doing anything about my anxiety now until it's really, really, really high. Well, then I got a lot of work to do to bring it back down. And that's if I can use logic and reason. When my anxiety is really high, I got a lot of cortisol in my brain. I cannot think straight. Logic and
Yeah.
reason are not there. So my ability to use those is going to be significantly impacted. So one of the things we look at with our clients is, what does your anxiety look like at a 1 out of 4, a 2 out of 4, a 3 out of 4, a 4 out of 4? And so if I can start to recognize the symptoms at a 2 or a 3, put strategies in place then, it doesn't have to get to the 4. So now I'm aware of what my anxiety looks like. I have strategies. I practice putting those things in place. I'm going to feel way more confident in my ability to manage my anxiety, which means I have less anxiety, which means I'm
right, because it's not about the thing that might happen, actually.
exactly right. Anxiety, again, belief in self. So it's not about the event. It's the anticipation of the event. And, your listeners all agree. Lots of times we have a ton of anxiety going into something. Then it actually happens and we go, that wasn't that big of a deal. Why was I so stressed out about it? Because anxiety isn't about your actual ability and skill.
Yeah.
It's about your belief in yourself. And so the more you build that core belief, good enough, important, and valued, the more confident you feel in yourself. The more confidence, the less anxiety.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It really reminds me, I saw this video recently where somebody was saying, specifically around people who've been cheated on, people who've been betrayed, and that's my story and my journey. And how do you ever trust again, right? That's the question. And there's this anxiety, this fear of putting trust in somebody else, not feeling like that will happen again. And the video, this person said, it's not actually about trusting that you'll never be betrayed again. It's trusting that if it happens, you will walk away, or you will hold the boundary, or you will be fine.
Right.
Because it's the trust in the confidence, to use your words here, that you're not going to allow that relationship because you know what to do. And it's just a hard line, instead of you can't control another person, but you absolutely can control your response.
Right. And you know what? I think it's even okay to realize that part of why we don't trust in each other is, what if I do get sucked in? What if I do get hurt? You will still handle it. It won't be fun. Okay. It won't be great. It's not going to be a good while for a few days, but you will be okay. We are way more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
We've all been through a lot and we've survived it because we're here today talking about it. And so once we realize these things, we can trust in others, and that we might get hurt and we'll still be okay on the other side of it. Then we're more willing to trust. But trust also has an impact based on our previous life. If I grew up with a parent that I thought I could trust, but they didn't really protect me, they didn't keep me safe, they lied to me, they didn't follow through on what they were going to say, I trust in them over and over and over again, and I get betrayed over and over and over again. So now what happens is I don't trust in myself on who I can trust and who I can't trust. So I'm just not trusting anyone. So it's that blanket slate, which we often see with more of that anxiety, more of that core belief. It's either not at all or 150% in the other direction, rather than finding that balance in the middle. But to find the balance in the middle, I have to trust that I can make a decision and I'm going to be okay to manage it. If I go from one extreme to the other, I don't really have to make a decision. I just do what I always done. Don't have to think about it. But I'm also not building that confidence in learning to trust in myself that I can handle making these decisions. I can handle making a mistake and I'll still be okay and figure it out and sort through it on the other side.
Right. Or find value in it, or see it as a learning experience, or whatever it is
For sure.
that we do, we can reframe it. But if we're so fearful of ever taking the step forever, then it really that's that freeze response. We can't do anything.
Yeah.
We get stuck.
Yeah.
And then we beat ourselves up for getting stuck.
Right.
So we go down the rabbit hole.
And I'll say to my clients, so what do you get out of being stuck? They say, I don't get anything out of it. I don't get anything out of it. I'm like, oh, yes, you do.
Clearly you do, or you wouldn't keep doing it.
Great. Everything we do for a reason. What do you get out of getting stuck? You don't have to make a decision one way or the other. You get to ride the fence. There's safety in that. right?
Yeah.
You don't have to take that risk. Sadly, though, I see a lot of people that are stuck for very, very, very long time. They're missing out on incredible opportunities that are happening around them. But if you're always looking down, you never see what those opportunities are.
Yep. Yeah. And in some cases, if we can own that I actually am okay where I am right now, I don't need to do things and I don't need to beat myself up. I'm just in a place of less movement. That's different.
Right.
But that's a very different conversation with ourselves than I'm stuck and can't do anything.
Right. And that's what I say to my clients. That's not being stuck. That's making a choice. I'm staying where I am. That's not stuck. I'm making that choice. That's a conscious decision of right now with everything going on. I don't want to do anything different. I'm staying where I am. Good. Own it. The more you own it, the more confident you're going to be in that decision. The less regrets you're going to have later on. But when you just avoid making that decision, avoid making that commitment, that's more the stuck, and that's more likely the stuff you're going to regret later on.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's for that kind of victim energy. It's not in my control. It's not in my power. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Woe is me comes into play,
For
right?
me, I don't have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about when you do work, since originally your passion was around kids. And so now if you work with parents or other kids, I you've been doing this now a while. And so I imagine you've gotten to see some progression of when our kids don't hold these beliefs and they start their adult lives in a more healthy state. What has shifted?
Kids feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
They feel connected. They feel safe. They get to just be kids. So, when the parents are saying, my kid just puts her pajamas on and goes to bed now, it's not a fight anymore. So it can be little things like that. My child's making their own lunch and getting ready for school. It can be big things where, Sally wants me to go and smoke some weed with them after school. And I don't really want to do it and I don't know what to do. So I'm coming to my parent to talk about this, figure out what I need to do.
But I feel safe to do that.
Exactly. They've worked really hard on creating that relationship, creating that trust that they know they can go to their parents and their parents are going to handle it. I say to my parents, like, when you're getting angry and you're getting upset over little things like you forgot to bring my lunch bag home, my shoes are in the front entranceway, you're freaking out and getting angry and overwhelmed over that. And then you want them to come and talk to you about some serious issues. It's not going to happen. They're going to think, they couldn't handle that. They're not going to be able to handle this. So it's helping the parents kind of just calm and settle, trust in themselves, be present with their kids. One of the things that has a major influence is we don't like to feel our emotions. Yeah. Well, as a parent, if I don't like to feel my emotions and my child is feeling emotions, that creates emotion in me. I don't want to feel my emotions, so I need to shut my child down. I need to make them feel better. I need to solve the problem for them. I need to distract. I need to minimize. I need to do something to make them feel better. That's not their need. That's my needs. And so the more parents are working on becoming more comfortable and being okay to feel their emotions, the more they're able to be present while their child is struggling and feeling their emotions. If your child is struggling and doesn't feel heard, they are not going to talk to you. It's not going to happen. So it's really important that parents are doing the work so that they are feeling and sorting through their emotions. They're okay to do that so they can be present in being there for their child, not needing to swoop in and rescue. Because if I swoop in and rescue them, my child feels better right away. Not helping the child. It's telling the child, I don't think you can handle doing this. I better do it for you. Reinforce is not good enough. Or tell you. Saying to the child, oh, that's really sad. I'm sorry you're going through that. Tell me about what happened. How do you want to handle this? How can I support you? That says, I trust you. I know you got this, and I'm here to help you if you need. Very, very different feeling for the child, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a balance between boundaries as a parent and making sure your child is heard and seen, right? Because it doesn't mean kid can do whatever a kid wants necessarily either. There's still rules and boundaries that we have to set up, especially depending on age and all kinds of things. I would really love to know how this works with a neurodivergent brain who is really hyper focused on some of these concepts, who probably feels even less seen most of their lives, and will focus on the intellectual piece and almost resist all of the emotional piece because it's incredibly overwhelming in a different way.
Right. So one of the things that kind of works with neurodivergent and even kids that are just really shut off emotionally, they don't want to
Yeah.
feel their emotions at all, is talking about emotions in the third person.
Mm.
So when you ask me how I feel, that instantly is going to create emotion in me. But when you ask me what you think that person over there feels, it's not as scary. I don't really know
Mm.
what they're feeling. What I'm telling you is what I would feel in that situation, but it's more
Right, right.
safe. So just using the vocabulary and talking about emotions and what emotions are, reading stories, sure, you can read emotion-based stories, but you can read Goldilocks and the Three Bears and ask, "Ooh, what do you think Goldilocks is feeling in this one? What do you think baby bear is
Yeah.
feeling in this one?" And so just talking about emotion normalizes it. For
Yeah.
the vast
Yeah.
majority of us, we don't think about how we walk. We just one foot in front of the other, go, 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 go. But emotions, ooh, now all of a sudden I have to think about it and I have to sort through it. I have to figure out what I want to say and how I'm going to process and what it's going to feel like. The more I normalize it, the more natural it comes in being able to just get it out. But for some,
Mhm.
the more we push, the more they're going to resist. So
Yeah.
we need to kind of present it in a way that feels safe and then back
Mhm.
off and let them see what they're going to do with it. And it takes time. If you've got a 7-year-old and you're going to start talking about emotions, I mean, 7 years, they haven't been talking about emotions. That's not going to go away in a week or two. But
Right. So, okay, it's emotion day.
that's right. Yeah. You want to send them into a tailspin and have a total meltdown. Good way to do that for sure. So you
Yeah.
got to go slowly start talking about what they think. You're at the
Mhm.
park. Oh, what do you think that lady is feeling over there? And there is no right or wrong answer. They're telling you something. If you ask your child 10 times what they think someone else is feeling, and 7 times they're telling you sad, they're telling you something. They're feeling sad, right? And so then you can what do you think would make them feel better? What do you think would make that person feel better so they're not feeling as sad? Why do you think they're feeling so sad? Again, we don't know, but what they're telling you is their own experiences. So it's important to just slow down and listen to all these little tiny pieces. There's often these little drops of gold happening all around us, but we're so busy, we don't see it. You stop, you can notice a lot more for sure.
Yeah. And I noticed with my kids, especially, that I go through periods of overwhelm and just, I get very sensory overwhelmed too, especially we've had a big weekend. And
Not even
rather than just being cranky, I will say, I'm feeling really exhausted. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm needing to take space. And I will say it out loud as more of this model
oh,
example.
I
I
need
need to be disconnected. I need to make sure you guys got your stuff. And then I need some space for me. In some ways, trying to give them permission to do the same thing when they do, without waiting for the explosion to come. Because I've noticed when I start to feel really tapped out, that's what comes if I don't listen.
right. And I think it's important. Again, we need to teach them that it's okay to figure out, yeah, we need to have space. So it's okay to have a conversation. Say, we had a really busy weekend. We had a lot of going on. So this week, we're not doing a lot. And, Monday when we get home, we're just having a quiet day. We're just going to kind of decompress and
Yeah.
bring things down. We have to be a bit careful, though, about how much we're talking about our emotions. If
Okay.
I'm talking about my emotions, I'm going to shut my kid down. If I say, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling overwhelmed, they're going to think, oh, I better give her space to feel that. Right. So we need to kind of figure that out. We don't actually have to talk about our emotions to teach our children about their emotions. And I always say, think about it. There's people in your life that you can go to and talk about things. And there's
Mhm.
people in your life that you can't go and talk to about things.
It's
What's
true.
the
Yeah.
difference between those 2? We know ones can handle it and the other ones can.
Mhm.
And the ones
Right.
that cannot, what are they? They often have a lot going on. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're really anxious. They're always angry, irritated, grumpy, overwhelmed with every little thing. We're not going to go and talk to them. So we need to be aware of that as parents. How am I presenting? Am I presenting as, I got this, we can handle it? Or am I presenting as, I'm going to lose my mind over, little tiny things? That sends a very clear message to our kid. But we're human. We have emotion too. So I have to find the time to, after the kids go to bed or when they're out playing in the backyard or whatever, to take time and feel my emotions, let them out so I can be more present with my kids. But we have to be careful of how much of that we're actually exposing them to. And I know that is a touchy issue. I know here in Canada anyways, a lot of parents say, oh no, I need to tell my kids what I'm feeling. That's important. That's how they learn. Sure, they're learning, but it's coming at a cost as well. And if you think about how you interact with other people and their emotions, you'll kind of see how that is a connection. So we are human. We do feel our emotions, but we need to be careful in how we're going about that as well.
Yeah, I think for me as a solo 100% of the time, there's no breaks parent. Well, it's a balance because most of the time I am put together. Most of the time I've got this. But when I'm not, I do need to say so for my sake because there is nobody else to step in. And so, but it's making sure that they don't feel that's not the norm, right? That's just, this is the current moment.
Right. And okay for them, important for them to know that they didn't cause that. Right. Because then that builds shame.
Right.
Oh, and if you want an emotion to reinforce not good enough, it's shame. Shame, and they're good enough.
It really does. And shame is probably the biggest thing that I have had to overcome. And I literally published my big shame as in a way to
get it out,
completely alchemize it and change it and say, we need to speak into the shame and no longer have it eating at us like it really likes to do.
Yeah, shame's a big one for sure.
Shame's a big one. And so I think really to your point is if you are saying I need space, it's we had a big weekend or these other people were around or it's nothing to do with you guys. I just
space.
I just need to, exactly. And this just happened, not in a bad way, but we had family over for Easter weekend. And so it was just much more socializing than I normally do. And I found myself more tired. Yes. And I also found them more tired.
Yeah.
And by the end of the weekend, people were in my spot. And oh my goodness. And it's just, all right, we're having an early bed. I need it too. It's okay. But it's not about them. It's not, they didn't do anything wrong.
Right. And helping them see that self-regulation of, we had a busy weekend. We had a lot of things going on. We had a lot of people in our space, in our home. So now we need to decompress from that. That's a good life lesson. That's much better than now I need to cater to my mom and dad's needs.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think it's kind of understanding. And what I hear you saying really is it's understanding the ways that children are going to receive the shifts in us. And so it's not that we need to hide things from our kids necessarily, but it needs to not. They need to never perceive that it's about them that caused these things, that we have it mostly together so that we are safe places for them to come and share. That we can be that space that they need instead of we're just got everything going a bajillion directions. We don't have room for them anymore because that's so often what sends kids, okay, I'm going to go talk to my friends. And then, the friend's response is actually the healthiest one in some cases.
So many kids spend so much time trying to do what they think is right for their parents, to taking care of their parents, tippy-toeing around because they don't want their mom to get angry or, making sure their homework's done and they got perfect grades because if not, their dad's going to be disappointed in them. And, all those kind of things, they have an impact. So what I always say to my clients is switch it around. If you were the child watching you do what you're doing right now, would it make you want to connect with them more or would it push you away? And if it would push you away, then don't do it. How can you change it and shift it where it's going to create more of that sense of connection?
It's a really, really great way to look at it. And we all were children at one point with parents who we probably didn't feel like understood us. And so we can kind of find the connection there. And I know my dad was only in my life in early childhood, and all that mattered was that I got good grades. I was only praised for intelligence. I wasn't allowed to have emotions.
Right.
And then my mom was the opposite, and emotions were her only language. And there was a lot of passive aggressive, oh, I'm a bad mommy because I did that. Immediately projecting this guilt, need to take care of. And I played the mother to my mother so often in my childhood. And that was my unraveling to learn that I don't have to take care of everybody else around me.
And that's a big group of my clientele that I have are these, parentified children where they are now adults, but they didn't get to be kids because they were having to take care of their parents, their siblings, whatever it might be. And it's emotionally crippling on those kids for sure.
Yeah. And I've actually just learned recently that as the parentified daughter who was taking care of my sibling, when I left, because I eventually had enough and pushed my way out and said, I'm done, it was another abandonment to my sister, which 16, 17-year-old me didn't even have the ability to understand the impact to her.
Right.
But, that's a different version of it that everybody has constantly left. And so we've had a lot of conversations, and really wherever you were on that spectrum, having immature parents in a sense and not healthy parents really breeds that in the kids. No matter, everybody's doing the best they can, sure, but no matter what that was, those patterns continue to repeat.
Right. And there's always consequences for it, right?
Yes.
You needed to get out. You needed to do what was right for you.
Exactly.
But there can still be the negative consequence of, on your sister. But if you would have stayed,
it wouldn't have been better either, really.
And usually what we see is more resentment between siblings because then the older sibling is trying to parentify or be the parent for the younger one, which breeds more anger and more frustration and damages the relationship either way. So there's kind of always a positive and a negative with every decision that we make. And we just have to try to be aware. I always talk to my clients about be aware, think about what the consequences can be so you have a good idea of what they are, but then make the decision anyways. And just know that nothing is 100% sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. There's always going to be a bit of a storm.
There's no perfect solution, no perfect answer.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that if all answers are good in some way, you can find value no matter what it is, even if it's simply another course correction. But I don't like that. That's still a valuable learning.
For sure. Even the biggest crisis can be opportunities for incredible growth, for sure. I always say, those crises are good things. When things are going well, that's great. It's good. We need to practice that. We need a bit of the break. But where real growth happens is usually with the crisis.
That's my whole life. I am somebody who doesn't sit still, and I keep doing things, and then I have to constantly shift. But that's my story. That's my big journey is a huge crisis, shocking crisis.
Yeah.
And overcoming that and then sharing it. And then it's not that my life stopped either. It continues to go through. I'd lost my mom last year. That was another crisis, another learning, another evolution, another healing.
Yeah.
And it's opportunity for my sister and I to get closer because all of this stuff got to come up.
Yeah.
It's so many layers of so many things.
For sure.
That continue. And in some ways I can look at it as, well, I'm not stuck because I keep doing more things.
Yep.
But yes, it's definitely can be trying and can be challenging.
Yeah.
But I personally wouldn't do it differently. That's why I keep doing it.
Yeah. Growth is good, but it is exhausting for sure, right? You still need to take rests in between.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that is the one I have to work on. That is the conversation with myself that I have to remind that just because I've lived my life in fight or flight for so long and I've mastered the way that I can do that doesn't mean that I have to live and I have to create that chaos in order for movement to come.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think chaos is one of our biggest addictions that we have.
Guilty. 1,000%. Yeah. I got bored. I literally went and bought another house to have a new business and a new thing because I don't sit still.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, if you
that's
grow
what I
up
do.
with chaos, it becomes pretty programmed in the brain there. And then when you move out, you're on your own, you don't have it, you'll create it for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
I
it's for
mean,
me, it's really been learning to actually enjoy peace, to actually enjoy stillness, to not need plans and movement in every moment, because that part comes easy.
Yeah.
It's the presence that really is just.
Yeah. A lot of people can't sit still even for a minute without noise, without TV, without something, their phone, right? And what I'll tell clients is just even 10 seconds, if that's what it is, where you just still don't move, no noise, no nothing. Just start with 10 seconds. And then you can slowly build on that. But we need to find that presence. If you want to get to a sense of contentment, you have to be able to be still.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And to teach our kids too, the same things. That
Absolutely.
we can be just as busy and momentous and we can do all these things, and that we also can be still and present and happy in each moment as we do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has been a really amazing conversation, and I am definitely excited to get your book. And I've read a lot about core beliefs in various texts. There's a lot of spiritual beliefs around your belief creating your reality and how to unravel that. So it really deeply speaks to a lot of what I've really unraveled for myself and still continue to dig deep in myself. And I always love to see other methods to reflect, to bring new awarenesses. And I think it's a really beautiful thing you're doing as you're putting this book out, because you're only one person and you don't want to. Someday you will retire. It's not see patients over and over and over. And so knowing that's out there as a way for people to really get help, I think is really beautiful.
Thanks. I want to be able to provide that opportunity for people for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know I will share your websites in the show notes for people. I know you said you have a waiting list, but I assume that if they are in your area, they can get on that list if they want to work in person.
Yeah, for sure. I with my registration, I can work with people that are in British Columbia. So people that are in there, if they want to work with me, they can call. Right now, my wait list is about 8 to 12 months. So they can get their added there. But the website has a lot of information on it. It's got a blog section with a lot of readings. It's got all the podcast interviews that I've done. It's got information there on selling my book as well, where you can go to buy my book. So there's lots of information on my website at trobekholistic.org as well. And it's got all my links to all my social media on there as well.
Amazing. Yes. And I will put all that as well in the show notes. And then I love to ask at the end if there's any last words of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with as they process this conversation.
I think we just need to be kind to ourselves. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to take a risk, you're going to screw up, and that's okay. So the better we get at just kind of going, okay, yep, that didn't go the way I wanted, or I shouldn't have said that, or I wish I would have done that. Own it, reflect on it, take responsibility for it, and move on. So we need to be kinder with ourselves and just accept our flaws, challenge ourselves a little bit at a time.
Beautiful. I couldn't agree more. Thank you again for your time and your wisdom and the work that you're doing. It's really amazing to see people out there changing lives and putting all of this really beautiful wisdom out there. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for all the listeners, I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining us on Awakened Motherhood. I hope today's episode inspired you and offered support for your journey. Remember, your story has the power to ignite change, and your resilience is a testament to your strength as a mother. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Share it with other mothers who might benefit from our stories of empowerment and healing. I invite you to connect with me on social media platforms at Amanda Quick Healing, or visit my website, amandaquickhealing.com, for more information on other ways to work with me. Until next time, keep embracing your divine self and discovering your warrior mama within. Thank you for being part of Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change.